Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I really appreciate you all being here. Hello, Doc Flamingo, Cooperative Waffles. Tim reached out to me today and asked if I would care to discuss kind of a very different topic, a mostly different topic from what I usually do talk about here on the channel, because you guys know me and you know my channel is focused on tabletop RPGs. There's a little bit of crossover with what we're going to be talking about this evening. With that said, one thing that I don't want to I don't want to get overly involved in is the actual sort of, you know, oh, well, the last administration was like this and the current administration is like that. It's impossible to not talk politics, to talk about what we're going to discuss tonight. But I think we can all be civil out there in user land and in the comments and agree to disagree on matters, because we're talking about something that's a lot bigger, I think, than who got voted national dog catcher this past
Yeah,
November.
and I think there's a without discussing party politics, which I think has to stay out of it. If you look at it from a global perspective, we're not talking about the United States. We're talking about the entire globe. World wars are not just us; they're us and everybody else, right? So it's is what it is. You might need protection from radiation on this one, Rabbit Ring. And the reason I reached out to you, Bill, is I think I think gamers, war gamers, RPG players, whatever you want, and RPGs came out of wargaming, so I think that kind of fits. Is that if you look at how world wars have started, they've never been sort of overnight snap your fingers we're at war, right? It's a ramp up, it's a run up, and anybody who's been a student of history, and Bill, you and I have talked enough. I know you read history. That you look at it and you're like, are we in a world war, or are we seeing the start of it? Because I think everybody thinks World War III is just going to be a bunch of nukes fly and then starting tomorrow, right? We're at war. But that's not really the way it works. Like, I've got books in my house, and I've read a lot about this stuff. Like, going back to this one, which is a 6-part series by a guy named Francis March. It's called The History of the World War. It was written after World War I and before World War II, so it's there was only one at the time. It came out in 1918. That's the first edition set, by the way. I think that if you look at what's in these books and how World War II got started, I think there was a ramp up, and yes, there are similarities to what's going on around the globe, but you're not seeing. I could point to it in both our major political parties and what we're seeing from different countries in the world, around the world, and saying, look, I'm seeing all politicians who are in office doing some of the same crap, right? And anyway, so thanks for agreeing to do this, Bill.
Well, not at all. Thank you for asking me to do this. And first of all, I am in agreement with you vis-a-vis this is a global issue. Again, it's not who was elected national dog catcher. This is something that affects all of us. And I do want to point out to those of you who've read the description and so on, Mike C. Will be here momentarily. He got delayed, but he will be here in a few minutes, and I'm interested in hearing his perspectives. Now, Tim, I said this in the lead up, and this is something that I firmly believe is true. I think we have been in a soft third world war probably since mid 2022, when we really began to accelerate the delivery of war material to Ukraine, because it wasn't just it wasn't just a Well, the United States sent some Humvees and some trucks. All of NATO responded. We got as close to invoking, and this is my opinion. If you disagree, that's fine, and I will absolutely hear you out. But I think with Ukraine, we have gotten as close to invoking Article 5 of the articles of NATO. For those of you who are unaware, Article 5 basically says an attack on one member of NATO constitutes an attack on the entirety of NATO. Now, Ukraine is not part of NATO. They had been pushing to join NATO, and there's been some back and forth about once this war is over, will they join NATO? Won't they join NATO? But we have come right up to the line of basically saying they are a de facto NATO member, and we are going to invoke the fifth article of the NATO pact and do what we have to do.
Well, we kind of, I agree with you because I think we kind of in a way screwed Ukraine because we promised if they gave up their nuclear weapons, we would come to their aid if we ever had to. And they needed us and we kind of didn't. So,
Yeah.
it, we, so yeah, I think we kind of hung them out to dry in a way. But is that the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do? That's for other people to decide. But we did say we were going to do something, and then we didn't really do it. And I agree with you. And I think that our tempo of a global war kind of got accelerated in October of 2023 when hostages were taken in Israel, right? In Gaza, and now we got this whole Israel-Gaza thing. And since then, Israel has not been pulling punches in the Middle East.
No, not.
And I think we all kind of forget sometimes that that's going on. And now it's like they're trying to play a PR war with, well, we're really, in trouble here. It's Israel's fault. Like, well, but Israel, they didn't really start that one, right? They're kind of just trying to get their people back. So, yeah, I think we've seen this sort of stuff where it accelerates. And if you go back to World War I and World War II, things started over this little ramp, and it takes one little thing to get nudged and have it go completely, over the edge. And the other thing, and this is where I think our other guest will, when he gets back, will probably have more to say than either of us because he understands politics. Is the way you get the United States or a globe to go into a war and have it go, if you want to beat us, right? If you really want to beat us, and I thought about this a lot when I wrote my book, The Last World War, back in 2014. The only way to beat us militarily is to have us politically divided. If we're unified, you are in trouble. Because after 9/11, our entire nation was unified, and most of the world rallied around us and said, okay, we're going to help the U.S. because they're unified, and if we don't, that's a bad thing. We are not unified on even a Blue Jean commercial at this point in time, right?
Very much so.
Much less what we should do about either Ukraine or Gaza. So if you really want to start a world war, now's your chance because we're about as divided as we've been in my adult lifetime, and I'm in my 50s. So I think with us being this divided, I think we've got a big problem. And how much of it's been internal versus external, I don't know. Are we beyond the tipping point? I think we're close. Because there was a time even just 15 years ago where you could sit in a room, Republican and Democrat, and have a discussion and have an exchange of ideas. But now, in general, not always, but in a general sense, when you try to do that, one side or the other starts accusing the other one of being stupid or low IQ or brain rot, and both sides do it. They just use different words to do that. Mm-hmm. But neither of them want to get in a room and have an actual substantive discussion. And that to me is really where we've got a problem. And we need to get back to where we can do that.
No, I would agree. And we have a question from the audience. And this plays into that, Tim. And this question comes from Michael Dale. How much do you two think if at all, the current state of division in the U.S. has been due to outside influence. Have we reached the tipping point? I think a lot of it is outside interference. I honestly feel that um, the speed of communication and the openness of communications, and I will go on record as saying I think those are two good things, have unfortunately left an opportunity for bad actors, whether you think that they're from Russia or China or Trinidad, whoever is out there throwing sand in the gears. I think, the it's mercenary, but the smart thing to do is to lean into that when you see that opportunity. I mean, there's a fellow on YouTube. I often strongly disagree with a great deal of what he has to say, but he's a very, very smart individual, Ryan Macbeth, and he does a lot of open source intel and cooperative waffles. You've been reading ahead, follow the finance. He will look at posts that get just out of nowhere. Why is this person getting 750,000 views in a couple of days on a particularly inflammatory post? And so, okay, where is this coming from? Where is this email registered to? Yada, yada, yada. And he works backwards through it. And suddenly you find out that this is someone based out of, what is there's that separate oblast just north of Poland in Europe. Help me out, Tim. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's part of Russia, but it's not attached to Russia. Yeah. We'll find out, look at where this is being posted from, this is a guy who's got like a picture of a good old fashioned American as his user profile, and Bob Smith, Ames, Iowa, God, Guns, and Country. I think this, and you find out that no, that's not Bob Smith. That's Boris Simonnikov from Odessa, and he's probably a paid Russian stooge. But I do believe that there is ample discord and yellow journalism that Kaliningrad. Thank you. Yes. That is stirred up out there. And hopefully we can be smarter about recognizing that us individual people, me, Tim, Rabbit Wrangler, Cooperative Waffles, Michael Dale, Alan, whoever you are out there, hopefully we can be smarter about not knee-jerk reaction. I'm gonna tweet something hateful back at you, and I'm gonna focus on my anger at that and not worry about what I need to be worrying about.
Yeah, it's the anger that gets me, right? So like I made sort of a conscious decision in the last couple of days to just sort of point out nice things when I see them. Like, I was at the grocery store with my kid, and there's this one grocery store in town where, my God, their customer service is just next level. So I said something to the managers. They're like, oh my God, really? And I compliment some people online. They're like, oh my God, wait, what? It's not the hot chick just posting pictures? No, I'm like actually trying to be, and those sorts of things are so bizarre that now when people see him, they're like, okay, what's he after? What does he want? Right. And I'm like, I'm just trying to be nice. Right. That's the whole point.
No.
And I think that's our problem, is that we don't know how to be nice anymore. It's like everybody wants to be the first to jump on and say, no. And, whether it's political or not, it's like we've turned everything into a political argument, whether that's, we turned a virus into a political argument somehow, quickly. But if you look at like Israel and Gaza versus, which is a huge political argument, people picking one side or the other.
We got to be careful with that one.
And Ukraine, everybody's like, well, we shouldn't really be involved. We should do this. We shouldn't do that. Well, that's a tightrope when you're talking about Putin on the other side, And when I posted that I was going to do this live stream, somebody brought up, like, yeah, I'd be worried about it if Russia and China weren't about to collapse. I'm like, are they?
Really? I want to get into that, and we're gonna. I see Mike is Oh, he'll be coming in just a second. And I do want to get his opinion, but you brought up an interesting question about the slow progression to war and how it's not like you know we're not at war today, but tomorrow we'll be at war. Um, I mean, even in the case of Pearl Harbor, I mean, we had now. Please, audience, whether you're watching this live, whether you watch this in the future, do not misconstrue what I'm about to say because I will justify this. We were putting the screws to Japan. We'd cut off shipments of tin and steel and oil, and good good because Japan was using those to fuel a war machine that was pretty horrible. So it was not a case of there we were sitting in Hawaii minding our own business. They were going to do something. There was going to be an incident at some juncture. And in the European theater, I mean, Tim, have you ever read Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by Schreier?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I read that book and it opened up my eyes about so many facts about the war in Europe, and one of them was that the French had invaded. Well, I shouldn't say invaded. They sent troops into the Ruhr Valley because war reparations were not being paid in a timely fashion in the 1920s. There were French troops in Germany making sure the factories in Germany were sending durable goods to France as they ought to have as repayment for the First World War. And again, this first of all, that was justified, but second of all, that goes back to the statement wars do not just happen. And I keep getting ready to add Mike, and he keeps he keeps slipping off. So
He'll come back in, or he won't. When we
yes,
but no, I think are we in a world war at this point in time? I think it all depends on your definition, right? We could argue that definition all day long, but the thing that has me largely the thing that gets me thinking about it is that at the outset of World War II, as a country, we were in a much different place, both from hey, Mike is here. So
hey, Mike.
Hey, Dr. Mike. So, if you look at it, but if you look at the world, like at the outset of World War II, we were relatively unified as a nation, right? We weren't as divided. We weren't anywhere closely as divided as we are now. We were relatively unified as a nation, and we knew which side we fell down on. We were like, okay, we're with Great Britain. We're with we're against we're against the Axis powers. We're the Allies. We didn't have any question on which side we fell on. If there starts a world war today, I'm not sure half of the Americans are going to agree on which side we agree with, right? Which side do we throw down with? Maybe I'm wrong, but I think there would be at least a double-digit percentage of Americans would be like, no, we can't agree with those guys. We have to go agree with those other guys. And, call that what you want. But I think that division causes other nations to be emboldened, because if you can't have the big kid on the block, which is the United States, dependent on to come in and break up the fight, you're like, okay, cool. I can go pick on the little guy, right? Or I can go pick on that other guy and do what I need to do.
So, Mike, I had a few years ago, I read your World War III 1987 blog, which, by the way, guys, is linked in the comments below. If you want a hell of a good read about a plausible World War III scenario in the 1980s, please start at the beginning and read the whole thing. It is a damn fine read. But I remember making a comment, and it was just a couple of months after the Russians invaded Ukraine. And I had said then, and I still believe this, and I think you and I were on the same page, but if not, I definitely want to hear from you. And this was by spring or possibly even summer of 2022, I said that I believed that we were in a soft third world war at that point. At this point, because I don't, my opinion has not changed. At this point, I feel like we are de facto in a in yes, a shooting third world war. Um, we we have gone literally all the way up to the hair thin tripwire, and we're standing there. So Tim and I would both like to hear your perspective on that.
Sure. Well, I think that the way it stands right now, we're definitely closer to a mistake or an error or a misperception leading us into a greater conflict, a conflict between the great powers, so to speak. And maybe we weren't there a few years ago, right at the start of the war. You know, if you want to go back to summer of 2022, the Russians were still pushing. They had an objective that, in their minds, it was reachable. And nowadays, things have kind of made a turn for the worse. Um, it's kind of similar to. I was just bringing this up with some of my colleagues the other day. You guys remember the Iran-Iraq war? You know,
Of
it
course.
started off, yeah, back in the 80s. This is it's very similar. It's kind of like a 21st century Iran-Iraq war. I mean, even to the point now where there's almost deadlock at the front lines. Neither side is really going anywhere too deeply. Um, we developed into the war of the cities. I don't know if you guys remember that from the Iran-Iraq war.
Yes,
Um,
yes, the
now,
Scuds and strategic bombings.
Hmm.
right. That's kind of where we're at now. Maybe more so with IRBMs and drones. Neither side can really. They can't force a change at the front line. So what the Russians are trying to do, they're trying to demoralize the Ukrainians, demoralize the people, try to get the citizenry in Ukraine to help bring a change in leadership that'll bring about something they're looking for. Um, the Ukrainians are trying to do the same thing, so to speak, but they're not having the success that they would have if Russia was a country that had an open population, excuse me, open media, you know, where their population can see everything that's going on. The Russian government is controlling everything media-wise. So yesterday we saw about a drone attack on a Russian refinery. I think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how long is it going to be before the Russian people find out about that? So maybe they don't know how bad the war is going for them. And meanwhile, Putin is trying to keep the war going,
Hmm.
thinking that maybe he can get his forces into an advantageous position. So when they do start to talk peace, he'll be at an advantage. And right now, anything can happen. You guys saw what happened with Medvedev last week and his comments. Sometimes that's all it'll take. You know, comments are taken the wrong way, and he's talking about the Soviet, you know, nuclear, well, the Soviet era nuclear strike capability as their last resort, and then he's saying that the U.S. by pushing for peace, it's increasing the chances of war. We respond to that by sending a couple of attack subs into quote unquote regions of interest. So sometimes that's all it takes, and we have to be very careful.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to World War One, a
Yeah,
relatively low-ranked archduke gets assassinated, and countries start declaring war like it's a carnival.
right.
And I read enough about World War One that some of the comments by world leaders were weird. It was like, well, we're worried about what happens if we don't go to war. It's like, what? Like, it's like, How is that rational? It's like, well, if we don't do it now, we may as well. We may as well. What the heck, right? Everybody else is doing it. We want to be the cool kids. So it doesn't take much to tip those scales. And if you look at at where we are, you're right. I mean, one little thing taken out of context causes all kinds of problems, right? So, like, offhanded comments are now pushing stock markets one way or the other, just if the right person says the right thing at the right time, and later they go, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, that was a mistake," and it swings back the other way. We are very much a gut reaction kind of planet, and sometimes if that gut reaction costs in lives, sometimes it's too late to take it back, right? And we've got this other problem where we like to, both sides again, love to say, well, that's fake news. I don't believe that, but I believe this. I don't believe that, and I believe this. Right? We all decide we have our own facts, and if my facts don't agree with your facts because we can't necessarily agree on what facts really are, things could go kind of strange. And I started realizing we were in trouble back a while ago, and I don't remember which one it was, but some press secretary said, they're like, well, these people over here said something. Well, yeah, but we have different facts here. I'm like, funny thing about facts, they don't shift based on who has them. They either are or they aren't, right? It's not, there's not two different facts of it. You can't be 180 degrees apart on the same subject. That's not the way facts actually work. And I keep looking at things around the planet going, okay, what's going to be the tipping point, right? If Israel Gaza hasn't been the tipping point yet, I don't think it's going to, because that part of the world's been shooting at each other for 2,000 plus years.
Yeah.
Ukraine had me more thinking, okay, that could be the spot that does it, because there are some natural resources in Ukraine that Putin obviously wants. And there's a port that he would very much, I think he's already got. But, so if you look at it from a strategic perspective, Ukraine is actually very important to him. And then the problem everybody has is, okay, but what's next, right? What about after Ukraine? Because, he said this. I'm like, okay, but, we should have years ago gotten in the middle of it and said, okay, UN, this is what you guys are here for. I get that he's at, Russia's on the Security Council, but, they just invaded another country, for goodness sake, right? We can't. Yeah. That's not how this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
If they wanted it, there's ways to annex it, right? You can have a vote, you can do all kinds of other things to annex it, but taking it militarily and then going, well, it was ours anyway. That's not the way this works. But we didn't do that, right? We said, okay, well, we'll send arms and you guys go blow each other up, and it'll be good for our defense industry, and we're all happy with that. I think we screwed up by not doing it the right way at first. And now it might be too late for us to try to go back and do it the diplomatic way. It might just be like, the only way we're going to solve this is militarily. And if we're going to be involved, the longer it draws out with us not being involved, the worse that gets when we finally are there, because everybody else is all battle hardened and ready to go. And we're usually geared up to fight the last war we fought. And last I checked, the last thing we fought was a terrorist war, right, against a counterinsurgency group. It was not up against something like Russia, right?
Yeah,
Russia hadn't been throwing first line gear out; they've been throwing sort of second and third line gear out. But if we show up, guess what they're going to put out there, right? It's not the old stuff.
Well, and I wanted Michael to ask you about something, because the discussion had gone a little bit to World War I. Do you think this is a phrase I think it's particularly chilling and grim, but I do like to use it in discussions like this, because it implies a good degree of gravity. Michael, do you think at this juncture Putin is shackled to a corpse? Do you think he at this point there is no letting go, there is no peace with honor, there is no stepping back and de-escalating?
It certainly seems that way. I mean, just based on his actions lately, especially with bringing about peace, which we've tried. He hasn't been very sincere with wanting to make a decent effort towards peace talks with Ukraine. He wants the
Hmm.
peace talks to be along his line, along his train of thought. He wants his original goals from the war, and that's all it's going to take. So right now, yeah, he's kind of is shackled to a corpse, and it's pretty scary too because the Russian military, ground forces and air forces, anyway, they're really not going to be able to do much in the future for the next year or two. They need to rebuild.
Yeah,
So all, oh, go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
and they don't have a ton of money, and that's why I think they're using older gears because the new equipment is really expensive.
Yeah,
Well, and I don't respectfully, Tim. I've watched a lot of OSINT stuff. I mean, you can pay $200 and get a satellite pass over
Sure.
any nation in the world you want, and there are some very good channels on YouTube where they have been using 3D satellite imagery and so on. They've been counting the tanks and airplanes and armored personnel carriers and mobile missile systems and so on that the Russians have. They have been using their frontline stuff.
Oh,
They're
have
out
they?
of it. They're
Okay.
out of it.
Oh,
They're it's
they-
T-62s and T-72s.
oh, really?
T-55s even.
Yeah, even T-55s. They're they're out of. I mean, when you talk about they're not going to be able to do stuff for a couple of years. At this juncture, I would say a decade. If they just turned around, went home, said leave us alone, sorry about that, and dedicated themselves to Soviet era production goals of getting their tanks back, they might have a couple of thousand in
So-
6 or 8 years.
So the
North
only
Carolina. Oh,
the
sorry.
channels I've been watching are a little bit different, and it shows sort of live streams of what happens downtown Moscow and downtown other cities. And what you find is that there ain't a lot of men, right? They're just not floating around those cities anymore. The ratios are off. Like you go downtown in Dallas or Orlando or something, it's sort of 50-50, right? And
Right.
it's not that way in Moscow and other cities around Russia. So I'm happy to be wrong about the equipment that they're burning their frontline stuff as well. But they're also, I think, having a people issue at some level. But they don't put the same value on human life that we do. So it's a
Definitely.
little different.
Well, you know how it is with Russia. I mean, Russia always, casualty-wise, they always accept more casualties than their opponents. It's just kind of how they fight. They always have, and they really always will. But as far as the equipment goes, I mean, their cabinet is very empty right now. I mean, probably to the point where if we keep going along these lines, we may go back to the T-34s within a year or two. But
Yeah,
it's
that
really
that is that is just that's staggering because I mean, I think we're all around the same age, and now I will straight up admit, no, I did not serve, but we all kind of grew up with this idea that there were 50,000 Soviet tanks ready to roll into the Fulda, and they had these super advanced BMP-2s, and what they couldn't beat us with in quality, they would beat us with in quantity, and so on and etc. And to see that kind of that's kind of evaporated. So we come to the question of manpower and demographics, and I want to ask each of you the same question. I'll start with Mike. Do you believe the 1 million casualties figure that has been tossed out by international organizations on the Russian side of the equation?
I'm not ready to buy into that yet. Just because if there really were 1 million casualties, we would hear a lot more about it to the point where it would be a big story. And more to the point, the Russians couldn't hide 1 million casualties. They just can't. Even considering the type of government they have now and the propaganda machine that Putin has,
Right.
they just can't. You just can't. You can't hide those kind of numbers. So I think that a lot of these OSINT groups and some of these think tanks, they're running wild with some of these numbers. But that's That's normal. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
They don't have the intelligence that government organizations have, intelligence organizations, combatant commands. So they're just kind of swag, simple wild ass guessing. They're doing a good job, but
Sure.
when it comes to when it comes to looking at, for example, some of the videos that we're seeing from the drones and stuff from Ukraine, you're seeing these tanks explode. They're getting hit by ATGMs. They're getting hit by drones. But what we don't really know is how many of those tanks are being pulled off the line and put back into service maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, maybe a little longer. That's something that they're really not. The think tanks in the oceans, they're not really taking that into consideration. They see a casualty, a vehicle casualty, and in some of their minds, the tank's dead. It's never coming back. Well, maybe it
Yeah,
is, maybe it isn't. I mean, it's just kind of that simple.
yeah. If we can rebuild some stuff real fast when we have to, right? I'm sure they can do it too.
Right.
And
Right. Exactly.
you know, Russia's good at hiding bad stuff. So is it a million? I don't know. I can't tell you one way or the other. I can tell you that I think they are willing to tolerate a lot more than we are for the sake of getting natural resources that they want. And I think that's part of it. And I think the other part is Putin. I think for him, this is sort of like, you know, saving face. He wants the Russian Empire back. And he wants that to be his legacy. And right now, this is the one thing that makes me kind of look at it and go, this is weird. Putin is aging. He's getting older. He's not, a spring chicken anymore. And I'm going to have to look at 72 years old. Right. I don't think this is the legacy he wants to leave. I think he wants to get this to go a completely different direction sooner rather than later because, he's not going to be around forever. And he doesn't want that legacy on his record. He wants to be the guy that fixed it, not the guy that put them into a protracted, we can't make headway kind of war.
That's true.
Well, one of the things you both talked about OSINT and what we see and everything, and I mentioned it too, and this actually is a little bit in my wheelhouse. I can say this with some authority. Is that no YouTuber lets a good crisis go to waste. If it's anywhere in what they're used to talking about. So a few years ago, Wizards of the Coast did the thing, and because I was reporting on the thing, my channel blew up, and I'm grateful for their mistakes when they make them because I then get to talk about them. But Mike, you're right. There is a sense of, I want to be the guy that talks about today's, drone strike number 728 on the 433rd Latrine Cleaning Brigade, straight out of Leningrad, So I think there is probably a tendency, and I don't think it's all necessarily divisive. I mean, there are some pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian channels on YouTube, more of the former than of the latter, who will absolutely inflate, the destruction of one tank, one aircraft, the ending of one life as a major defeat. It's they've been pushed back. The enemy's been pushed back, and here we have drone footage, and we have this, that, and the other, and they'll show you the same drone footage with rock music playing over it from 50 different angles, and by the end of it, you're just so, you're just so overwhelmed. Your senses are just so overwhelmed. You find yourself thinking, well, what did I just watch? Was it one guy? Was it one tank? Was it one airplane? Or was it 5? Or was it 50? Or was it 15? And was this in a major city, or was this just some podunk village that literally consists of a crossroad at 2 dirt roads in the middle of the Ukrainian or the Kursk, in the case of Russia, countryside? So I think there's probably a lot of a tendency. I mean, we were talking about football before the show got started. We're all football fans. Me more college than you guys, but you go and even after a loss, they'll talk about, oh, but look at our yardage, look at our completions, look how close we got.
Yeah, Dallas fans have been doing that for years. We don't want to talk
Right, and it's copium. I think the kids call it today. You're huffing that copium, and I think all along, what is the old comment? The war will not be televised, even more than Vietnam, than Operation Desert Storm, Operation Allied Force, Operation Iraqi Freedom. This has been a televised war because the most recent incursion, the most recent war, for lack of a better term, that the United States has been involved in, kicked off in 2003. That, to my technical brain, was not that long ago, but back then, nobody had a smartphone. You might have a flip phone that could record 5 seconds of grainy 240 or 144p video, but nobody had a smartphone. Every trooper out there in the Ukraine theater has the equivalent of a high definition broadcast rig tucked in their shirt pocket. So we're getting this war televised, not televised, live streamed 24/7 if you want to hop from Telegram channel to YouTube to Twitter and then back around. So I think no more ever has it been more true that the first casualty of war is truth than it is right now.
Well, I think that's another problem we have on how to decide which, for the American population anyway, to say which side do we fall down on. It's like we're so used to seeing things on YouTube. You don't know, people are like, oh, I believe this guy, but I don't believe that guy. I believe this person, but I don't believe that person. And it's really just an influencer. And let's face it, I can do that from my living room. And I don't really have any better information than anybody else. What we need is actual investigative journalists who actually are going to give out real, facts. And we don't have those anymore. They've kind of gone away. We've got all these opinion guys out there now that don't actually deliver factual news. And I know somebody's going to say, yeah, but during World War II, we had propaganda films, and sure, we did. But they were certainly much closer to the truth than what we have today. And I think that's part of our big problem is that, we see those things coming from the front lines, but who believes that's really from the front lines? And there's 20 people in the comments, as soon as it goes live, going, well, this is not really from there. That's just, fake, whatever. And
guys, I'm about to lose my my cell phone. I'm down like 2%. I'm going to switch over. To my PC.
Okay, when you switch over, I have a question I want to build on from a comment someone's made. So we'll see you in just a minute.
Okay, great. 2 seconds. I'll jump on quick.
All right.
But I think that's part of our problem is that we don't necessarily understand, hey, this is the right one. Because somebody asked in the comments about anti-Semitism earlier, and I don't know the answer to that because I don't necessarily follow it closely enough. But I think part of the problem you have anytime Israel is involved is that the number of people who sit on the Jewish side of the religion fence is very small by comparison to the people who sit in virtually any other religion, right? So if you get a boisterous few in any other religion, it's going to overwhelm the boisterous few that come down on the Jewish side. So I think, is it, what is it, right? Really what's causing this? And I think when it comes to like the Gaza problem, they shoot rockets into Israel all the time, and they have for years. They took prisoners and didn't give them back. And is Israel right or wrong for what they're doing? It's for people smarter than me to figure out, but they didn't necessarily start the fight. Now, when it comes to Ukraine and Putin, I think the biggest problem still, and I don't see a way out of it, is we messed up when that whole thing started, and we didn't adhere to what we said we were going to do and go in and protect them. And I don't see it stopping. I see drones going back and forth and refineries getting blown up. I see all kinds of weird things happening. But where does it end? And does it? Or do we just eventually have to go in and go, okay, look, we're going to put the 82nd Airborne here, and you guys are all going to chill out. Is that really what it takes to get these things to end? Is us deploying troops?
I hope not. I honestly, I really and truly hope not. I feel like I feel almost like the time to have really done something about this would have been to have cracked down when they took Crimea, and that was in 2014. Gonzalo says, so I'm ready to end my channel. I hope not. I sincerely hope not. And for anyone who's tuned in, again, and as always, this is primarily we talk about Dungeons and Dragons around these parts. So it's a little bit unusual.
And the reason I wanted to do this, and thank you, Bill, for doing this, is that I wrote this book in 2014 called The Last World War, and my thought was, what's that next world war going to look like? And I started realizing I don't know that it was that terribly far off. And I'm not trying to compliment myself or say go read my book. I don't know, if you read it, great. If not, I don't care. But to say we are in a particular spot in history where we have technology available to us, where we could actually. Wars usually happen for a couple of things. They happen for natural resources, food, the ability to have people be able to get through life in a way that's comfortable, right? That's historically how wars have happened, unless it was for religious reasons, and that's another thing I could never solve. But technologically, we are at a spot where we can feed the global population. We can house the global population. None of that's in question. We could do it. And nobody really has to go starve or anything along those lines. And that's not been true sort of ever in history. But we also have the ability to go the other way, and we could destroy half the global population in an afternoon should we choose to do it. Whether that's by nuclear means or biological or anything else. But to me, we need to make a choice on which way we're going to go, because the only thing that we're doing is drawing it out, right? And the longer we draw it out, the riskier it gets on sort of taking out half the global population. Because if we let things continue to fester and continue to get worse, when you tip over, it's not going to get better, right? It's like,
right.
You ever have a friend who's, and I hate to compare this to something financial, but you ever have a friend who's like, paying off one credit card with another and thinks it's a brilliant idea, and they'll just eventually sort the problem out? Never ends well, right?
Yeah.
It ends badly, and the further you kick that can down the road, the worse it gets. And I think we're kind of at that point globally where we've kicked the can down the road so far that when it finally we finally say we have to stop and fix the can now, I don't know that it's going to be that simple to do, because it would have been a lot easier sort of 5 years ago. It would have been a lot easier had we ended World War II the right way, but we kind of didn't. And a lot of what we're seeing, World War One. By the way, somebody commented, and I'll piece a couple of these together. I really think World War One was the opening act for World War II. There was just sort of a intermission for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've seen, the Cold War certainly came out of World War II because we didn't quite end things the right way. And what we're seeing now, I think, is a lot of remnants of sort of what went on at the end of World War II, and they're all coming to a head. The trouble is, do we fix it and fix it the right way, or do we fix it just by saying, okay, we're going to brute force it? And if you let it tip over and try to brute force it, you've got a bigger problem. And I look around the globe, not just in the United States, at political leadership, and I don't see anybody who's being serious about ending it peacefully. I see a lot of people who are being serious about, well, we're going to go shoot some more people. But I don't see a lot of people going, okay, chill out, sit down, give the hostages back, let's fix things the way they should be fixed. Hey, Russia, Ukraine, come here, let's talk, sit down. I don't see that anywhere. And I see a lot of people going, no, we won't talk about that because it doesn't directly affect us, right? And we don't want to talk about it until it directly affects us. So I think to get that problem fixed, somebody has to be the grown-up in the room, and I don't see anybody on the global stage anywhere, not just here, who's ready, willing, and able to do that. I see a lot of people trying to figure out how they can make money off of it, but I don't see a lot of people trying to figure out how to end it.
Yeah, no, I think I think you're right. It kind of plays back into what when I said, "Hey, this is good for clicks." This is good clickbait stuff. Um, I think the ugly reality is that there's a desire for clicks, if you will. The clicks in this case is global influence. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask Michael, and hopefully he'll be able to rejoin us without any technical issues rather for the last bit of the program. And Alan had asked this. I wonder if Putin is using the war with Ukraine as a way to stay in power. I feel like it's. Thank you, Atomic FX. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel like watching Bill and Tim usher it in. Hey, I don't want to usher it in, man. I like my air conditioning. I like my streaming shows. I like my print on demand and filament printers and all that sort of stuff. So,
Nobody's going to invade Nobody's going to invade the U.S. Trying to get from Florida to Texas would be the end of just about any
right.
on the planet.
But as far as Putin using this to stay in power, I think at this point that is almost the tail wagging the dog. I think power is using this to hold on to Putin. And what I mean by that is the war will not let him go. The war will not release its jaws from his throat. Tomorrow, he has the power to do this. Tomorrow, if he woke up and said, you know what, this was a bad idea, this was a bad call, it's a meat grinder. We're just going to walk away from this. We're going to reestablish. He would suffer a fatal heart attack within the hour.
Yeah, politics is a full contact sport in Russia.
Absolutely.
I think we're kind of on the right track here in that I think one of the biggest problems, and I've not done enough of the math to really know where it falls down, is I almost want to say, because we can solve it if we chose to, but no world leader is doing it. I think you're kind of right in that it's a power thing. It's like somebody in power is making sure that this keeps going, right? Whether that's on our side or their side or somebody's side, somebody somewhere is deciding that this keeps going. And I hearken it back to, and I want to make an analogy that doesn't seem like it has anything to do with this, but it kind of does. People keep saying, well, why hasn't the Epstein list been released? We've been talking about it for however long. It's been through Democrats, Republicans. That thing's never going to be released because big end donors are on it, right?
Yeah.
That's all it is. There's somebody with a ton of money that's on that list, and they're saying, you don't put it out there and I'll keep donating to whoever it is that I need to do that. And that, I think, is what's keeping this going, is people in power are being kept in power by people with money, because politics requires cash. It is a sport that is not free. You have to be willing to pay a large sum of money to get into it. But look at the average net worth of a politician, not just here, but sort of globally. It's big, right? And it has nothing to do with their salary. It has to do with all the other stuff they've made money on over the years.
Nope.
So I think following the money is really the way to figure out who's calling the shots here. And I don't know that there's enough hours in the day to sort out who's really the one behind all this, because it's not an evil corporation, because all the money is too carefully watched. It's big name people that are pushing those buttons. Who is it? I don't know. But there's somebody with a ton of money that keeps this stuff running, and I have no idea who it is. Because otherwise, if there was enough money and peace, some politician would be out there doing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's what's the song from Megadeth? Peace sells, but who's buying?
Exactly.
But anyway, so here's Mike back, and I want to I want to run Alan's question by him. So, Mike, are you with us?
I'm here finally.
Okay, great, awesome. So we had a question pop up here. I want to make sure I get this. Let me see, where is it? But basically, the question, I think it was from Alan, was, do you think the war is a means by which Putin is trying to hold on to power? And I have opinions about it, but I want to hear your opinions on it.
Well, I gotta say, he probably is holding on to power. He's prolonging the war. That's why he wants to stay on the power. Sorry. He wants to stay in power. He wants to stay in office. And he's going to have to run this through right now. Because if he leaves now, and what does he have to show for the effort, the casualties, 2.5, 3 years of war? I mean, he's got nothing to show for it. He's brought economic issues, economic troubles to Russia, the people. Mm-hmm. And he's brought so many casualties. I mean, there's no point in him ending right now. You know, it's not gonna be to his detriment, not detriment, but it's just not gonna be to his advantage. So if he leaves now, he may be out of power soon. But one thing you got to think about is this war has been going on for how long now? And every time there's been a Russian politician who's come out and spoken against the war, spoken against Putin, he disappears. He disappears, or some terrible tragedy befalls his country.
Yeah, he has polonium salt instead of actual salt.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean,
those darn balconies that are so unsafe in downtown Moscow.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of Russian politicians that seem to have accidents off the 21st floor of some building, right? It's amazing how that happens.
The one Russian politician who had an army to back him up, you know, I forget the name of the
Prigozhin.
Yeah, Prigozhin.
Yeah.
He was pushing on Moscow, and he listened to Putin. He believed Putin's lies. And a couple months later, he ended up dying in a plane crash, mysterious plane crash.
Yeah. Funny how that happens.
Funny how that happens.
You know, avionics issues. But right there, I mean, who's going to stand up?
Right after the pilots jumped out with a parachute.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, if he walks away from Ukraine with nothing, that's really it's going to cause a problem. And his hold on power is not going to be anywhere near as strong as it's been. So,
and something I had said in response, I think at this point, I mean, I think Putin has a tiger by the tail. He does not dare let go of this thing. Yeah. I honestly think tomorrow, if he woke up tomorrow morning and over breakfast just said, "Look, guys, even if we win in Ukraine, we're gutted on every other front. We couldn't take, you know, we couldn't take Baltimore at this juncture."
Hey, Baltimore's rough, man.
Yeah, but okay. We couldn't take Longwood, Florida at this point. What do you say? We just you know, declare, status quo antebellum,
Right.
and we just focus on rebuilding our military and rebuilding our infrastructure, he would suffer a fatal heart attack before lunch.
Well, that and I think Ukraine, I think they would be like, no, just going home and staying where we are is enough. We need our space. We need our land back, right? So I think he can't because he'd have to give back the space that the spots that he took. He's not going to do that, right? So I think we're at sort of this point where it's going to take a very large third party or group of nations staying together and going, this is how it's going to go. For either one of those two sides to really back down. Because I think right now to the point where Ukraine's going to say, great, go back to where we started, right? That's ours, that, this is yours. And Russia's going to go, well, no. So, but again, there's nobody on planet Earth that's a world leader who's doing that. I don't see anybody anywhere standing up to make that call.
Very true.
I see a lot of us going, yeah, we'll send equipment, sure, okay.
And that's right there. You mentioned it. Look at Europe, and look at the weapons lockers in Western European countries. They're empty. They don't have much more that they can give at this point, especially now because they're starting to perceive Russia as being a threat to them down the line. Mm-hmm. So they can't keep sending every tank, every missile, every SAM launcher over to Ukraine to keep them going. They got to keep something in reserve, and they don't have much they can give now.
And to be honest, how much can we afford to keep doing is the other question.
That's exactly. We're having some problems now too. I mean, we can't keep just handing them. This is a very expensive draw. I mean, we're giving them a lot. We're giving them a lot of weapons, a lot of munitions, and they're holding the line, but only barely. Mm-hmm. And we don't have much more we can give. And neither does Europe. So,
because inexpensive missiles are $1 million a piece, right? I mean, they're not cheap, especially when we build them. Yeah. So if we keep resupplying them even with Patriot, those are $3 and $5 million a reload, or they were 10 years ago. So it's expensive, and we're having economic challenges at the moment.
Yeah.
And we can't just say, "Oh, let's add another $1 trillion to our debt in the next 100 days." What the heck, right? No big deal.
Yeah.
We can't keep doing that.
And meanwhile, we've got to look over. We're looking over to the Western Pacific right now, and we've got to keep our weapons lockers full because God knows what's going to happen there. We just don't know. We can't keep taking the weapons and the munitions and everything else and just handing it over to Ukraine. We can't right now.
And our production rates on a lot of this stuff is not that fast. Right?
Yeah.
So if you want to reload some of it.
Yeah, it's not World War II anymore. We're not the arsenal of democracy that we used to be. It's just not there.
Yeah, I mean, what's our total number of F-35s? It's not a huge number.
No, it's not. So.
I think it's sub 300 still.
I'm looking it up right now. 1,100 have been built, but I'm not sure which nation has which ones.
Yeah, that's the total. So, and that's a lot of countries. That's a lot of nations that have F-35s in their air forces. Japan, South Korea, Australia. They're going to have it, and pretty much Western Europe entirely. I mean,
and compared to the 5th gen fighters are starting to pop up, even the F-35 is kind of 30 years old now, 35 years old. It's not new.
It's still. No, it's still it's been out there for a while. I mean, it was. When did it really come into? When was it designed?
2006.
Late 90s. Yeah, late 90s or early 2000s. So.
Yeah, well, if I worked in the defense space for a while, so it first was manufactured in 2006, which means it was designed and agreed to in about 98 someplace.
Right.
Right. So it's back there now. And if you look at some of the new stuff that's coming online, F-35 is a good aircraft, but compared to the 5th gen fighters, man, I don't know.
What was what Tim and I share this meme sometimes. It's like you think when you think 50-year-old fighter jet, your brain automatically goes like F-89 or F-86. No,
F-14.
a 50-year-old fighter jet is an F-15.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, the F-22 is pushing 30 now, I think.
Yeah, well, they picked on the Tomcat in the latest Top Gun movie, right? It's like he's flying an antique. It's like
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
the F-14 for what it is, man. It was good, but
It was
it
good.
would get. The one thing I will give the F-14 credit for, and this is off the topic, but is before we went live, Dr. Mike was talking about reading some stuff about the Gulf War, and I don't remember a lot of the numbers because I was a teenager at the time, but yeah, the F-15 did take out satellites twice with the help of a missile. It took it up really high and launched it, but that was insane stuff. The F-14, if it had passed a SAM site before it got picked up on radar, all the pilot had to do was put it on afterburners and outrun the SAM because the SAMs in the Gulf War weren't as fast as the F-14s were. So the pilot said, all I got to do is go straight and go afterburners. No problem. We're just running out of fuel.
Actually, I shouldn't mention this now, but a Tomcat got shot down during Desert Storm the early days of Desert Storm by an SA-2. I don't know what the details are, but I don't know what happened. But it was kind of surprising. Vietnam era SAM takes down a Tomcat. It can happen.
It can, and like the I worked in missile defense for a while, so some of these things I actually know a little bit about. Like the Hawk missile, which was first in Korea or something, still in production.
Yeah,
and it's
amazing.
Ancient. But the reason it stays in production is because a lot of missiles use gyros for stabilizers, and most of the new ones use electronic gyros, and the Hawk uses an actual physical gyro. So it is absolutely impossible to jam. There is no way, once that thing is heading down someplace, there is no jamming equipment on planet Earth that can get it off target.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Which is why this 65+ year old missile is still in production.
Well, one thing I can tell you is that all of this is going to make for some smashing tabletop wargaming in a few years.
Definitely.
So.
Yeah, and I don't want to take everybody's whole Sunday night, and I know we've been running about an hour, so I don't want to take this and go too long with it. But the thing I wanted to kind of just start to have a conversation about is, I think, and Dr. Mike, I'd love your take on this, is we've gotten to a point, politically speaking, where if you and I are, on different political mindsets, we almost can't be seen in a room with each other. So, I got divorced a couple of years ago. Everybody probably knows that at this point. Everybody who watches me probably knows that at this point because I complained about it incessantly. Not the divorce part, but the dating part I've complained about. And I see, like, a lot of people going, like, when you meet somebody, they'll actually ask you what political party you're part of because they don't want to be in a room with somebody who's the opposite party.
Yeah.
And I've had people on social media unfollow me. I had this one guy who was really funny. He's like, well, I can't tell if you're left wing or right wing, and I don't do right wing, so I'm going to unfollow and block you. And I'm like, so you can't tell which side I'm on. So your solution is block me.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're a very polarized nation right now, and I mean that's a fact. But people are like that nowadays. I've seen it. Just going to Starbucks, and I've gotten some dirty looks for having an American flag on my shirt or on my jacket. Just it's like, what is your problem? I'm here for coffee. It's just
and I live in Texas where you can't necessarily say one political party, much less have a conversation with them. And you live in Massachusetts where it goes the opposite direction. And I find it tickles me to no end. And it makes my uncle, who actually is a retired political science professor, laugh. When I lived in Massachusetts, I was considered a right-wing nut job. And now in Texas, I'm considered a left-wing lunatic. And I haven't really changed my stance on anything. So
you're just kind of in the middle.
I'm just kind of in the middle. I'd like to actually hear both sides of an argument and make up my own mind. And I think that drives people crazy when it's like, I want to hear the actual argument. Don't tell me what I need to think. To give me some facts and let me understand things, and I'll make up my own mind. And that bothers people now. It's like, what? You want to think for yourself? We can't allow that. Crazy talk. Like,
Uh,
I'm going to
Dice
call you
Tales-
names. And I'm like, I got news for you. I'm Gen X. Call me names all you want. I really don't care. You know,
Dice Tales, no, I do not go to Starbucks. Please don't unsubscribe from my channel. When I need my caffeine in the morning, I have a Coca-Cola like all right-thinking Americans.
yeah.
But
All right. I'll admit I'm a Starbucks nut. I'm not exactly left wing, but I
That's okay.
like my Starbucks.
I will admit, their peppermint mocha is really good. I love it. It's a thing. I don't
Gotcha.
drink them that often because it's like 1,000 calories in one drink, but it's really good.
I just go in the morning. I grab a Trenta cold brew, and that's my caffeine for the day, and that usually lasts me the day. Usually,
Oh, those are rookie numbers.
yeah.
One coffee a day. Those are rookie numbers.
It's a Trenta though. That's a big cup. So
But no, I don't want to take away.
Tureen of
But
coffee.
I'd like to kind of I like having these conversations with people like Bill and Dr. Mike, you and I just met, but where you can have a sort of substantive conversation, and we're trying to be sort of careful about it, and say, look, here's the actual problem, and somebody needs to go be the grown up in the room and say, here's how it's going to end because we got to stop killing people. But nobody's really doing that. We're like, pick a side and go to war. I'm like, you ever notice the people that want us to go to war are not the people who actually go ever?
that's true.
They're not the ones that
Very true.
have to pick up a rifle and go do it. So
Yeah.
I think we need to get back to where we can have those conversations. And I don't see it happening. I see it kind of getting worse. And now, is that a social media thing for clicks? Is that, disinformation from some country? I think it's just a people thing, and it's where we're at as a society. I think we need to kind of get back to where we can have those substantive, meaningful conversations and say, look, here's how we fix it. And then actually have somebody try to go maybe, fix it. But, like when I go on certain channels that'll get, 500 views, 500 live viewers and, whatever. It's because you got two very polarized people just calling each other names. And who cares at the end? Neither one of them have budged, right? They're all just going to call each other names. And I think as from a social media perspective, which is honestly where most people get their news these days, those in the middle need to start speaking out and saying, hey, look, I'm in the middle and all of you are kind of nuts. Call me names all you want, but let's discuss things rationally. And I think there needs to be a place for that. And I think it needs to come back. And am I going to be the one to start that? Is Bill going to be the one that fixes this problem? Dr. Mike, who's going to do it? I don't know. But right now, people in the middle have shut down and tuned out and been like, nope, I'm not touching politics with a 10-foot pole.
That's a major problem, even going beyond politics, domestic politics. Let's go to international relations. Iran was a problem early, even before we hit their nuclear site. Mm-hmm. The president had said, he was talking about the negotiations, and it was obvious that there was a problem with Iran. But even before Israel went in, and you couldn't find anything about that on social media. People didn't want to talk about it. It wasn't a valid topic. And we saw that happen with India and Pakistan. We saw what was coming after the terrorist attacks. It was obvious something was happening there, a crisis, and that's a very dangerous flashpoint. But it didn't get the attention from the news or on social media until the fighting started, until India and Pakistan were shooting at each other. And we just kind of saw the same thing in Southeast Asia, too, with Cambodia and Thailand. So people just aren't paying attention. It's getting to be a very dangerous world out there, but they don't care. They want to worry about music videos and things like that.
And Sydney Sweeney on her jeans commercial, apparently. Is the latest one.
Yes.
Which, honestly, it cracks me up to no end that actually is a whole argument. And the only thing I'll say about it is, number one, she's a very attractive young woman. She's half my age, and I'm okay saying she's a very attractive young woman who's way too young for me to ever date. Number two, I saw somebody on Instagram today going, we're not talking about the big elephant in the room, and that Sydney Sweeney is old. I'm like, she's 26. What the heck are we so we're really literally making a big deal out of jeans commercials instead of paying attention to what we need to be paying attention to. And that is, we have an economy that we can't afford to go into a world war. We just can't. We don't have the cash. We can't afford to be world policemen anymore. We just can't. We don't have the cash. And we're in a place where we might have to go do those things. And where's that money coming from? It's going to come from debt financing. And how much of that can we really tolerate? And before you go, oh, the Fed, great, yeah, the Fed can do it, but what that does is inject so much cash into the economy that you wind up with inflation somewhere, and that's a bad thing to have happen to anybody. So we need to start to have rational discussions about how we get the world out of the madness that we're in, and I don't see them happening anywhere. Even like the Pope and coming out calling for world peace. He's just like, hey, I'm the Pope. Remember me?
Yeah, I'm the Pope, and things are bad.
I'm from Chicago. Pope. Yeah. So I think we don't really have anybody on the world stage calling for all this crap to come to an end. We have people calling for more weapons, and that's like the opposite version of what we should be doing. So I'd love to see that conversation happen more often. I'd love to be part of that conversation, but it doesn't. Like you said, it doesn't get it needs to get the views. We need to have that kind of be the rational side of things. And how does it happen? Some world leader has to be the one that says, this is how we're going to bring world peace about, or at least less conflict. World peace is never going to happen, but at least less armed conflict between big ass nations.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, especially now, it's
Bronze Age caveman. That is a different stream. Could we afford World War II right after the Great Depression? Yet we can't afford it today. We did not have the mountain of debt we have today. We were in a much different place, and people bought tons of war bonds, and we were close to not being able to afford it after.
We'll do that on Tim's channel.
But that's a whole different. The economics of World War II versus now are completely different things. So.
Yeah. And then the war ended, and everything changed. So.
Yeah, and a measurable percentage of the global population was killed in that conflict as well. It was not a small percentage either. I ran the numbers one day, and I don't remember what it was, but
right. But that was World War II. I mean, we caught a little break, and then we jumped right into the Cold War. So things weren't very quiet for too long. We had to bail out Europe.
I actually found my numbers. Roughly 3% of global population died in World War II.
Yeah.
So
there's a very interesting video. If you guys can find it out on YouTube, it should be pretty easy to locate. But it's short. It's info bite enough that you can sit down and watch it without your dopamine requirement sending you somewhere else. But basically, it establishes that we are basically post-World War II. We are in an unprecedented area of peace, even if you count conflicts like Vietnam, the Korean War. Like the number of wars and the number of people dying in war has trickled. Like, and when you see the historical basically the statistics they put out there, you're like, no, it's not. I mean, this war was terrible. Thousands died in that. And then you start looking at like percentages of populations, and you realize, comparatively speaking, there is no war right now.
Right.
I'm not being cavalier about what's going on. Just
you're right. There's no major war. There's no world war.
We are in what historians are referring to. Even right now, even with what's going on in Ukraine, even with tensions in the Middle East, we are in what a lot of historians refer to as the long peace.
True.
And
Probably.
I mean, that's probably the last thought I've got on this. I mean, is there going to be a third world war? I mean, eventually, yeah, probably. We're probably in a soft one right now. Can we step away from it? I think we can. I think we can.
I'd like to hope we can. And that's I'd like to see that conversation start and happen more often. So maybe this will be the start of something. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean,
maybe I'm wrong. But
if we step away from it, we just have to be cautious when we do.
Yeah.
We have to really analyze how we can do that.
Is it going to be a big? Is it going to? How can I put it? I can't even think right now. Sorry, guys. Is it going to be detrimental to our country? We don't know. But the world is dangerous. It's not going to get any. It's not going to get any calmer or safer anytime soon. I mean, just look at 2025. The number of the crises breaking out. We still have 2 wars going on: Israel and Ukraine.
Mhm.
And it's a dangerous world.
It is. All right. Well, let's leave it at that on a Sunday night because we haven't really hit anything controversial. But we someday I'll go through the economics of then versus now. And remember, I'm not an economist; I'm a physicist, so I can do numbers, but that's usually where it ends. And I think one of the biggest mistakes the United States ever made was going off the gold standard, but that's a whole stream by itself. But I think I think that's a great place to leave it. I think having these discussions that are sort of that moral middle ground of, hey, get your point, but let's find a better. Let's use our words instead of our tanks. Might be a better way to do things.
It would be. So.
Right on. Well, I want to thank both of you guys for hanging out this evening. Tim, thank you very much for asking me to do this with you. I know for a lot of my audience, those of you that are still subscribed, this is a very different model of business for me to share with you guys. But again, I think speculating on what the next war will be like is kind of something that we as tabletop gamers wonder about. And whether it's 1,000 orcs crossing out of the kingdom of Ayuz into the into the free city states, or whether we're talking about a hypothetical shoot 'em up in Central Europe courtesy of Games Designers Workshop, it's something that kind of looms on our minds a lot. I will be back tomorrow night with some fun live stream stuff, and I will absolutely have these 2 august guests back on the show again. We're probably not going to wrap up with Owl Bear tonight because it's a little too jaunty, I think, for the subject matter. But I will thank Dr. Mike and Tim both for being here. So,
Our pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. And I have linked to Mike's World War III 1987 blog. Heck of a good read. Just go all the way back to the beginning and read the whole thing through. It is fantastic. I've got a link to Tim's channel and to Tim's Twitter. Give him a follow. Give him a subscribe. And thank you, Atomic FX and Gonzalo, both for the super chats. And everybody have an absolutely wonderful evening. And we'll see you all next time. Peace.
Peace out.
Take care.